I'll just start with a nice easy one.
Yeah.
Who is David Gilmour?
God, that's easy. I wish I knew. I have no idea. Someone who spent his life driven by music more than anything else, I would say.
David John Gilmour was born on Wednesday, the 6th of March, 1946, in Cambridge, England, the third child of Sylvia and Douglas Gilmour. At the age of 21, he joined the band Pink Floyd, who subsequently went on to sell over 250 million albums. His playing style and trademark guitar sound is known the world over, and in 2011, Rolling Stone magazine ranked him one of the greatest guitarists of all time. His latest solo album, Rattle That Lock, recently entered the UK charts at #1. And now, for the first time in 9 years, he's embarked on a tour that's seen him perform sold-out shows in amphitheatres and grand halls across Europe and at the Royal Albert Hall in London. This unlikely location on the Thames is where David Gilmour records and mixes all his music.
And this is the...
This is the...
This is it?
This is the boat.
And where did you first glimpse this then?
I was being driven by someone. I stopped over there on the road somewhere, and there was less foliage then, and I could see all that glass and stuff. And I said, stop for a minute. And we peered over the wall up there and thought, wow, that's fantastic. The very next week, I was sitting in the dentist's waiting room, picked up a Country Life, and there it was for sale. I rang up the agent, came straight down here.
And so you split your time between here and the house in Sussex and in Brighton? And...
Yeah, this one has got the great technology for proper mixing. It's got a mixing desk, Neve flying faders where all the faders are motorised.
So this is the most high-tech bit?
This is the most high-tech, and I would have to come here to mix.
We look at it and it looks, oh yeah, really?
Well, it's beautiful. And that's it being built. Mahogany, Crittles gunmetal windows.
It's quite lavish.
Yeah. When we started thinking about doing the Momentary Lapse of Reason album, I'd just found and bought this place. Nothing had been soundproofed. There was no double glazing.
So the whole band would be...
The whole band would be in this room. The drums would be in this corner, which has got some sort of padding behind it and up there to help absorb the drum sound a bit. And the rest of us would be in here. Our guitar amps wouldn't be in here. They'd be in the other rooms out there in those little bedrooms and stuff. So we'd be in here, we'd be hearing what we're doing on headphones. But they'd be recording a Hammond organ, Lesley in that room, a guitar in that room. The bass would be going straight to tape without an amp. So, yeah, we made pretty much all of A Momentary Lapse of Reason in here. Most of, pretty much all of the Division Bell in here, in this room. And these tracks sound enormous, you know, but you can't quite imagine they come out of a tiny little space like this. Control room's in here.
Oh, look. Well, who wouldn't want to make music in this room, I have to say.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
What's your first memories, then?
Gosh. I have one sort of snapshot memory of me when I apparently left my nursery school at about the age of 3, which is in Homerton College, where my mother had been doing teacher's training, and trying to walk home 3 miles to the other end of Cambridge down Hills Road. That's the first snapshot memory I can think of.
So what kind of a family life was it? Your father was a professor, an academic.
My father was a university lecturer at Cambridge, lecturing in zoology and genetics. My mother had been at teachers' training college, but she never really went into teaching. Later, she became a film editor at the BBC, working on Junior Points of View.
You went to boarding school when you were 5 years old?
Yes. My dad went to a university in Madison, Wisconsin for 6 months. And we were popped into a boarding school in Buckinghamshire. And it was me at 5, my sister maybe just approaching 7, and my brother who was 4. And we were put in there for a year. My parents only spent 1 term, 6 months, in fact, in America, and then came back and lived in Cambridge, but they didn't see fit to take us out for Christmas or for the next 2 terms, while they remembered what life was like without children.
And when are the first experiences of music? When did that first begin to resonate in your life as a kid?
I mean, we had the radio on all the time and records on all the time. My parents had a very early stereo hi-fi system in the house. They loved lots of music. They loved show music, On the Town, West Side Story when that came out. And my mother played a bit of piano, and my father loved singing, you know, in the house, in the bath. There was always a lot of musical noise going on constantly. But the first big sort of éclat sort of moment was Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, which came out when I was 10.
We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on. Join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock.
And that was brilliant. And shortly after that, Elvis Presley with Heartbreak Hotel.
Well, it's down at the end of Lonely Street, that Heartbreak Hotel where I'll be just so lonely, baby. Well, I'm so lonely.
You still listen to it and you think, what a brilliant record. I mean, there's so little going on, hardly any drums, if any, just a bass and a piano and a guitar and a voice. But he was absolutely magnetic.
And this is home, in the Sussex countryside.
Hello, Mr. Cole.
It's David Gilmour's musical laboratory.
So, explain to me what happens here.
Well, this, as you can see, this is a music room. This has been developing, you could call it, over 21 years we've been here. The last album, On an Island, and a lot of the stuff for this new album, Rattle That Lock, were started in here, with me doing everything.
So what you do when you're starting to build the track, you start, obviously you've got your guitars, you know, plenty of them.
Yeah.
And then drums if you need to, your sax if you need to. You also play all these instruments. The mandolin, you play, I mean, what?
I'm really bad at quite a lot of instruments, yes.
Good, that's useful then.
David is continually jotting musical ideas, whether it's on an iPhone, mini disc, And then he will say, oh, I've got I've got some stuff. I'll say, oh, great, yeah. Well, about 150 or 200. No.
This song today came from several pieces of music. I just found that sound on this Kurt
Is that
Swell.
how it all started?
That's how one part of it started, and I played that onto the iPhone, and Phil found that, and then he found a bit of me strumming the guitar, which is a completely separate bit. So that one became the beginning, which has got me and Polly singing like a choir on it.
Oh, really? That's the other.
I'd listen through over a period of weeks or whatever, and then I try and see if there's any sort of bits that would work with other bits. Not all of those are terribly successful, and maybe some of them scare him. But there's been a few that survived.
So this is a bit that I recorded on my iPhone. I was in a studio and had an electric guitar plugged in, but didn't want to turn the gear on and get everything running, and just thought, this is a nice thing, I'll remember it. So I turned my phone on to remember it, and Phil found this bit just like this, and he stuck it together with the other thing. And then, when you add all the instruments on... I found it very hard to try and replicate that exactly as it is, with something about the rhythm of it and stuff. So we just used the original one.
This is Polly Sampson. She's learning guitar, level 7 apparently. She's an acclaimed author in her own right, and she's David's partner in more ways than one.
Polly, my lovely wife, she is at the heart of everything we do. Don't know where to begin with Polly. She's my sort of partner in life, and she writes most of the lyrics for my songs. Along with being a writer and a lyricist, she is a sounding board for all the stuff I do. I will play her things and she will voice her opinion, and she will be very astute in spotting things that maybe I haven't noticed musically. And has been doing that since we did the Division Bell album.
Beyond the horizon of the place we lived when we were young, in a world of magnets and miracles.
Were you a Floyd fan yourself?
When I was 12, my brother had, I think it was Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, but they didn't have a band name on them. So I can remember I used to play them, but I didn't know who they were by. So I don't think I ever wrote Pink Floyd on my pencil case. I wrote David Bowie on my pencil case.
When you met David for the first time, you didn't think, oh, this is David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. No particular.
He was a man with lots of children, I think, is what I thought. I mean, the first time I met him, he had 4 children and I had 1 child. And I think it was our children who kind of played with each other. And so we kind of ended up at this nice day, lunch in the countryside, sort of sitting near each other because our children were trying to climb the same tree.
David is not someone who is loquacious, but he is very emotionally engaged. But he doesn't necessarily display that. So, do you think that you're there partly to interpret what's going on in David's head?
Yes, I think so, and that does feel like a huge responsibility. But then, I mean, the whole of marriage is a bit like that, isn't it? I mean, particularly, with a partner who is quite silent. I mean, he plays guitar a lot, and I often think that if ever we were going to have an argument, the best way we could do it would be for me to use words and for him to answer in guitar, because he's very eloquent and emotionally eloquent with a guitar. So yes, it is, a lot of it is trying to just get under his skin and sort of feel what he's feeling.
Okay, so here's a track recorded 10 years ago for The Girl in the Yellow Dress. It says it's got a guide vocal on here. So.
Was the process always the music first? Was he kind of humming to you in bed or what?
No, it's always music first. And nowadays, he puts tracks on my iPod, and I just walk up and down playing all the tracks. And eventually, you know, one or two start to suggest things to me.
That would be what Polly would have on her headphones and would be listening to when she wrote the lyrics to that.
So that's really interesting because, you know, you sort of feel it's almost got the words on it.
Yeah.
His scats really do sound like someone singing in tongues. I mean, it's as though the words are just sort of under the surface, and it's quite interpretive at that point.
This girl gets right down in a groove. Woo the moon leads him on.
Most people imagine that people writing lyrics will be sitting down to table and crossing things out and writing things down. Do you write anything down?
It's a bit, actually, it's the same for my fiction. I think that the work is done while I walk. By the time I get back to the house, it's like practically like typing, because you know, while walking, I've kind of worked out what it is. But I have a notebook. So, I mean, this will be full of things that are not all to do with lyrics, but yeah, this was the start of today, I think.
It looks to me like a wide Sargasso sea of shit.
Yes, I had written a wide Sargasso sea of shit, which was, I think it became something else in the song, but I think it was a missing line, and I thought I'll get to that line later, and so I think I had written in the song a wide Sargasso sea of shit.
I wish I'd learnt the piano properly when I was young, and that I'd learnt to read music and could do all that stuff. Still can't read music. So you just kind of know that your children will be grateful for having learnt piano when they're adults, but they certainly aren't when they're young. It's just a chore. So they've all had piano lessons until they were bored to tears and begged us to be allowed to stop. Now they are moving forward, learning things by themselves. It's terrific. They are thoroughly enjoying it. Gabriel's piano playing, since he stopped having lessons, has gone from strength to strength, and is in fact playing on one of the songs on the album, purely because he's the right person to be doing that job. Romney's picked up the ukulele entirely on her own and play a number of chords and will happily sing anything. She's got a really nice voice, you know, with a bit of huskiness to it. Nice low register voice, lovely. Joe is into science and mathematics and is excited by those things, and has got a fantastic direct linear mind that looks to see if there's a better way of doing things, which will stand him in very good stead. They don't want to be musicians, and I don't know if they'll change, and I wouldn't dream of influencing that in any way. You know, Gabriel wants to be a set designer, maybe an actor as well. Romney definitely wants to be an actor. I used this on Breathe and on Great Gig in the Sky on Dark Side of the Moon, this one.
This machine?
This actual one, yeah, and I've used it ever since occasionally.
When was your first guitar? Were you yet in your teens or not?
My next door neighbour had a guitar. I was given a guitar. He was completely non-musical. I borrowed it and played it for a while.
How old were you?
Probably 12, 13. And I think I gave it to him back a couple of times, and then I borrowed it again. I thought, never mind. And he never asked for it back. And I kept it. Basically, yeah. My parents moved to America permanently when I was 18 or 19. And they lived in Greenwich Village from 1965 onwards. So, you know, they could see the end of Bleecker Street out of their window. So, I mean, I got Bob Dylan's first record for my 16th birthday, which they sent me from Greenwich Village. You know, and before then, they'd sent me Pete Seeger's Guitar Tutor record, which is my only actual instruction was with the Pete Seeger Guitar Tutor record.
For most of us, playing a guitar can be about as simple as walking. Of course, remember, it took us all a couple of years to learn how to walk.
It was an LP with a big book with all the chord shapes that you might need. It started out with a pitch pipe playing the 6 notes of a guitar. So the most important thing was to learn how to tune it.
There, now we're in business.
The second band was teaching you how to play a D chord, which is 3 fingers on the guitar, which you then strum. And then he sang some words. So you could do a song instantly with just 1 chord.
I gave my love a cherry that has no stone. I gave my love a chicken that has no bone.
So from the beginning of learning the guitar, I was learning singing as well. And singing is just as important to me.
That's your vinyl collection, is it?
There's vinyl over there. Well, it's mine and Polly's mixed together in a sort of obsolete pile of tea chests and shelves. Loads of stuff here, going way, way back. That's the 1959 Newport Folk Festival, which I was given on my 16th birthday by my parents, who were in America at the time, along with Bob Dylan's first record, which I think I've got somewhere, but I can't find it anymore.
Well, not for
so I've had these since my 16th birthday, as you can see by my youthful, possessive writing on the back.
Yes.
And I was very into folk music.
David
Pete Seeger's, Leon Bibb, some great people. And then you can go straight on to something like the Shangri-Las, you know, girl group in the 60s, early 60s, produced by a guy called George Shadow Morton, who painted oral pictures. I mean, Remember Walking in the Sand, Past, Present and Future, they're like movies.
So is that
It's
where
all
you
really
got
alive.
your interest in sort of extra natural sounds or even unnatural sounds?
It's the idea of creating a picture or something like a movie with the story that's being told that I love.
Who were the guitarists who you kind of got? Well, you talked about Pete Seeger, obviously.
Pete Seeger, Lead Belly, I was very keen on at a very early age. 12-string, he played mostly. Brilliant.
Me and my wife can pick a bit of cotton. Me and my wife can pick a bit a day. Oh, Lord, I can pick a bit of cotton. Oh, Lord, I can pick a bit a day.
You know, later, Hendrix, of course, Clapton. Joni Mitchell's guitar playing, her use of different guitar tunings was a big influence.
There's a man who's been out sailing in a decade full of dreams, and he takes her to his schooner, and he treats her like a queen, bearing beads from California.
Another side of Bob.
Yeah.
The first Dylan album, just called Bob Dylan, was recorded in December '61, and I got it in March '62, which was when it probably about a week after it came out in the States. I mean, that's pretty quick going. It's definitely long before it came out over here. When I went into the sixth form at school, the music teacher had given up doing music lessons by then for the sixth form. He just said to people, bring in a record, we'll play it and we'll talk about it. And so I brought Bob Dylan's first record in. I absolutely loved it. Played it. Silence. I was the only one who liked it. I went to see him at the festival hall. At one point, he lost a harmonica. He said, has anyone got a harmonica in C? And half the audience came rushing to the front line with harmonicas.
Everyone went through that way.
But we're going this way.
Whatever.
Family is everything. And you have to devote time and yourself to raising children, if that's what you elect to do in your life. So yeah, I'm loving my life with my family, raising these children. And when I was a young man, ambition, you know, the desire to be together with these other guys in a pop group. You're very, very driven and ambitious, and otherwise you won't get anywhere. And I certainly was, and I'm sure there's still vestiges of that sort of ambition still around, but I'm not as ambitious as I was. I've had that. It's been fantastic. I put just as much work and effort into making a record, but I can prioritize my time better.
Play Postman Pat.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat.
Please stop.
Early in the morning, when Thursday is dawning, Pat picks all his postcards in his bag.
Late on, I mean, and it was immediately clear what that song needed to be about. There isn't a day when one isn't affected by war.
When I'm singing this sort of vocal, I try not to constrain myself, and if consonants feel like coming out, they do. It's completely meaningless, you know.
When you say meaningless, you mean that you've not given them any kind of status at all, but they're
something.
what you, something, obviously.
There's something in there, I suppose you could say, trying to get out, and Polly is so brilliant at picking them out, but you can hear consonants that she's taken that were there and put a proper word to. Anyway, we'll have a quick... What has he done? God help us stay. That S is
yes.
Yeah.
So what's it like that first time that you hear not the scat but
Yeah, no, that's the best.
words?
That's the incredibly wonderful moment. It's really exciting, and that is, you know, it tends to be just the two of us. And, you know, I sort of give him the sheet of paper and he sticks it up and sings it, and that's I think that is the most enjoyable moment of the whole thing.
We have a very special guest joining us for the next song. This man gave me my first guitar and was also one of the first people to play in this venue. Please welcome Mr. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd.
Some of my earliest memories are staying at his and Holly's house in the countryside, and we'd kind of stay there for whole summers. And I guess I was too young initially to kind of understand who Pink Floyd were or who he was. I guess he was just a friend of my parents with a nice house.
This is crazy.
He was the first person that told me I had a nice voice, which I probably didn't appreciate at the time, but looking back, that was pretty cool.
So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain?
We have a very young fan base. Initially, I was a bit worried that all these 16-year-olds would have no idea who he was. But as soon as he walked on stage, I just have this very vivid memory of this 16-year-old boy in the front row, like tears streaming down his face with happiness. When we were actually learning the song, I went on YouTube to kind of look up a live version to see how he'd done it live in the past, and the first thing that came up was him and my dad playing it at the Royal Festival Hall, and it had something like 20 million views, and it suddenly all felt quite familial and circular in some way, that my dad had done it and now I was doing it.
So you think you can tell heaven from hell?
Pretty much everyone on my dad's side in the family is a musician. He's a guitarist called Neil McColl, and his parents were Ewan McColl, the folk singer, and Peggy Seeger, also a folk singer, and her brother was Pete Seeger. And strangely, I think David actually learnt to play guitar initially by listening to these instructional records that Pete Seeger had made. So yeah, it's all connected in some strange way, I think.
So here we are, rehearsal room.
So there's a lot of stuff here.
Well, this is basically pretty much what we have on stage. We all have our full sort of stage kit.
Are you going to take all these on tour when you go?
Yes, all these things come with me.
Okay, let's... John, would you play it off the thing? Because I can't really remember what I should be doing.
Ooh.
Start, just play it again, yeah.
Trying to remember these fucking chords. I'm forgetting the words all the time. I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to be playing all the time. Gradually, as you relax into it, you get more and more close to what you're doing. But I'm constantly, you know, listening to what everyone else is doing, trying to say, remember to say this at the end, or I just stop and we do it. And I have all the lyrics here. All of these I need to know by the time we get going. I have Shine On You Crazy Diamond. I have a bit of a mental block about that. So that is here, and that sits on the floor during every show, so with the start of the line, so I get the right lines in the right order, because for some reason I can remember 50 songs, word perfect all the way through, and I have a rotten memory.
Got that on the F? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Bam, bam, Great. Much better without me playing. Okay?
Rattle That Lock came out of the work that I'd done for the last book I wrote, which was a novel called The Kindness, because the main character in the novel is a student of Milton. I knew that I wanted to write a song about the need to protest, and I suddenly remembered Book 2 of Paradise Lost and Satan's heroic journey to go and challenge God, and I thought, well, actually that would work really well. Within that is everything I want to say, and I ran back and picked up the book, and there it was, and it was a huge, huge help.
It's a sort of, not exactly a call to arms, but it's encouraging people to stand up for themselves and shake it about a bit. Okay, let's do Today, just to cheer ourselves up, then we can fuck off. Da, 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 da.
Do we stay up? We stay up. Yeah.
Today, always today.
New day. New day when the weight of the world.
Just a day when the weight of the world. When that fat old sun in the sky is falling, summer evening birds are calling.
Way back when you were living in Cambridge, that's when you met Sid Barrett, isn't it?
Well, there was an art school for kids in Homerton College. They ran for, I guess, 5-year-olds and above, or 6-year-olds and above. They ran art classes on a Saturday morning. And I went to that until the age of 11. And apparently, I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know them. Both Sid and Roger were in the same class, in the same room as me for probably 3 or 4 years. But I got to know Sid when I was about 14 or 15, which is 3 or 4 years after that. We both went to the Cambridge Tech. I was there doing A-level languages, and Sid was doing arts, and we would meet up in the art school every lunchtime.
What was Sid like at that time and that age?
Sid was just, had a real magnetic personality, and a spring in his step, and a glint in his eye, and was very, very sharp and very, very funny. Everyone wanted to be friends with Sid, me included.
By then, what musically did you have any sense what your destiny was, what you wanted to do with your life?
By the time it got to taking my A-levels, I think I had pretty much decided what I wanted to do. And I thought that if I passed my A-levels, there'd be no way out and I'd have to go off to university, and the moment for my rock and roll career might pass. So I stopped going to the exams.
You just stopped, did you?
Yeah, in the middle of the A-levels. I
For fear
quit.
that you might pass?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. I've heard people saying, that they got into popular music because of the girls, the drugs, all the rest of it. But having thought about that, I think that it was definitely the music that was the absolute sort of main priority for why I got into it.
And when was the first move into performance?
I suppose when I was 17 or 18, I started, joined a band or two, you know, that you sort of flit in the door and out of the door very quickly. With one or two bands, an early one was called Newcomers. Then after that, I met some other people who wanted to do something a bit more ambitious. And we formed what became Joker's Wild. We did a lot of harmony music, Beach Boys, the Four Seasons, and we did your regular R&B, the Stones numbers, Beatles numbers, and there were 5 of us and we could all sing.
How did you keep pace with what was happening if you were doing all these covers?
It was competitive covering, you know. A new Beatles record, for example, would come out and we'd rush down to Miller's music store and we'd gather together in one of the little booths. And they used to have those stand-up booths where you could fit 3 people in like that listening to a single. But they also, at Miller's, had bigger room booths, which are about 6 foot by 6 foot, and you could get 4 or 5 people in, and you could listen to a whole LP. And we would listen to a whole brand new Beatles LP, and we'd be writing the words down and making notes on the chords and stuff as it went through, and we'd try to get them to play it to us again. And if the serving girls were in a good mood or you smiled at them nicely, they might play it a second time. And then while you're setting up for a gig that night, you'd rehearse 1 or 2 of the ones that seemed easiest and you'd got to know well, and then you could announce, you know, over your PA, and this is one on a song called such and such from the new Beatles album, which is out today, and it was, you know, it would be massively exciting to play a really bad rendition with all the wrong words and all the wrong chords, but all you could manage to pick up in 1, maybe 2 listens.
Can we hear some of Joker's Wild? Have you got any?
You can hear a bit of my embarrassment. This is me singing a cover of a song by Manfred Mann. Oh yeah, 4 seasons substantially on this, 3 by then. Focusing on this popular stuff, dissecting it and working out how all the harmonies work, how all the instrumentation was done and how it was produced. This is my musical education, really. My parents came to shows. I mean, they, you know, would drive me to things, you know, in the early days when I couldn't get myself to places they would take there. Sometimes they even towed a cart full of equipment on a trailer to gigs. They were, and they became big fans, you know. Couldn't get away from them later on.
So there was Joker's Wild, and then, of course, there was Pink Floyd.
Joker's Wild had done a few gigs on the same bill with the early version of Pink Floyd. We'd played in a couple of art colleges in London and a couple of gigs in Cambridge, and we played in a marquee in Shelford, just outside Cambridge, and it was, the bill was Joker's Wild, Pink Floyd and Paul Simon.
So what next?
After I packed up with Joker's Wild, I started moving between London and Cambridge a lot, and some people I ran into in London offered me a job with a band in a nightclub in Saint-Etienne in France. Then we just hung around in France for the best part of the next year.
And then, you lucky chap, you got to work with Brigitte Bardot.
Yes, I went in and sang a couple of songs on a film, for a film soundtrack, which was called 2 Weeks in September, which starred Mike Sahn and Brigitte Bardot. I've never heard them since. I hope you haven't found them.
I think we may have done.
In my small country, working all day until the night, they had no worries of any kind.
I don't think they're dancing to this track at all. They're dancing at a different ability.
I never tried to ask more questions.
More questions. I just, turned up in a studio in Paris and sang the words they put in front of me and went home.
Vous êtes belle comme la Vierge Noire qui guida les croisés jusqu'à Jérusalem.
So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell it?
How did joining Floyd happen? Because it was really to do partly with Sid's sort of inconsistency, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, Sid, I knew the guys from the Pink Floyd pretty well. I called Sid, and he invited me to go along to a recording session. They were recording See Emily Play.
There is no other day. Let's try it.
But he was very strange.
How?
The light had gone out of his eyes. He was monosyllabic, and yeah, it was very shocking.
So how did this transition, how did it happen then?
I went to see them playing at a party at the Royal College of Arts, just next door to the Albert Hall. And at that party, which must have been November maybe, Nick came up to me and whispered in my ear quietly, if at some point soon, we asked you to join, what would you say? And I said, well, I'd probably say yes. We did 5 gigs together as a 5-piece, which was pretty strange, I can tell you. And then one day we were going to play, I think it was at Southampton University, with T-Rex and people, Tyrannosaurus Rex then on the bill. And someone said, right, shall we go and pick up Sid? And someone else said, nah. And we didn't, and that was the end of that. In that sort of wonderful, callous way that you have when you're young and ambitious.
Were you as bad as the others then?
I'm sure I was just as bad as the others, yes. We became gradually more and more successful. There was 5 years really from when I joined to when Dark Side came out, which was when the sort of stratospheric leap happened. A bit and loved, the so-called glamour of the life that I had taken on. My father less so, only because it could have emasculated him a little bit. A serious scientist doing brilliant work, but not earning anything like as much as his guitar strumming son. And the thrill my mother got out of that couldn't have been that nice for him at times, I think.
We run back and drop in a bit? Yeah, you can if you like. Just turn it down a bit. I mean, I didn't really make a specific mistake, but... Turn it down? Yeah, I can't. My guitar's too loud. Yeah.
And that working relationship at that time between you and Roger and Rick and everyone, how was that at that period?
It was a sort of a microcosm of what went on later, We all found our place in the hierarchy and made it work for ourselves,
You call it a hierarchy?
Well, it is. I mean, these things always have a hierarchy, I think. There's Roger at the top, me next, then Rick, then Nick, in terms of who did the most commanding, bossing things around. But I felt that in my position, I was sort of more the leader of the musical side of things. And Roger was definitely, in terms of the lyric and the driving force, sort of way it was.
We have some pretty good arguments from time to time, yes. You managed to get over them? Yep, we're pretty durable.
I never had that moment of thinking, no, I really am a part of this fully. I always thought that I was the new boy, and they enjoyed that. They enjoyed playing on that. Yes, I mean, but, you know, in that sort of jokey way that you do, you know. They would always tease me for being the new boy, even when I'd been in it for 20 years, you know.
And what about the next stage, you know, post Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here? What happened after that?
Well, you know, that's ancient history. All that old ancient Floyd history, the arguments, the fights, and
well, you can.
I mean, we
get over it.
We did get on pretty well as work people, as work associates, if you want to call it that, throughout those years. But there were changes, you know, everyone's little problems and dissatisfactions all started coming more and more to the fore. Boring. Let's move on to something else.
In September 2009, David Gilmour's friend and musical partner, Rick Wright of Pink Floyd, sadly passed away after a long illness.
Let's do A Boat Lies Waiting. And a boat lies waiting.
The first song to be written was A Boat Lies Waiting. It was a beautiful piece of music. It was instantly sort of suggestive of something to do with the sea. And I went for a walk with it in my headphones, and then I walked back and David was walking towards me, and I said, just come and sit on the beach with me. I just want to talk to you about this piece of music. And I said, so David, just try to put into words for me what you think it's about. And he sort of stared off into the distance. And then he looked at me and said, well, I think it's about mortality. And what had just been happening was he'd been trying to find other keyboard players. And he'd, you know, come back having tried a few out and say, it's just not the same. It's just... And I think he realised, you know, really after Rick died, just what it was he'd lost. And so that then sort of mixed with this idea of the sea, and Rick spent most of his life on a boat sailing the Atlantic. And so the song became a song about David missing Rick.
This is the original recording. This is Gabriel making an appearance. So that dates this track to 1997, because that's Gabriel as a baby, and he was born in 97.
What made you put that in?
What?
Did you add that later?
No, that was
here.
That I did on a mini disc on the piano in the house.
Yeah.
And you can hear people wandering around and crockery being washed up and.
And you've left all that on the track?
Yeah, it's all on. Silence, I'd hear you, and a boat lies waiting. On the last album, On an Island, I had managed to get David Crosby and Graham Nash to sing on a couple of tracks from that, so I thought it would be great to get them in again and to recreate their sound with me, because we seem to fit quite well together. And that big harmony thing is something I've always really loved.
Something I never knew. In silence, I'd hear you, and the boat lies waiting. Still your clouds are flaming.
The first solo album that I did in 1978 wasn't what I was going to be then subsequently doing as my career. It was something to fill in a bit of loose end time and to just have some fun. Oh, look, mushrooms.
There are no boundaries set the time, and yet you wasted still.
That was to take a simpler approach, just go with a couple of old friends and just play some songs and have a bit of fun and see what happened. I mean, these things were really off the cuff. They would just sit down, play around a bit and say, right, record. But the last thing I did was what became Comfortably Numb. We didn't have time to work on it anymore, and it was still around when we got to starting The Wall the next year.
So this is the original recording?
Yeah.
Put it on the line, put it to the test. I'm just the same as all the rest. I'm not the worst, and I'm not the best.
God, I'd forgotten I'd written words of some sort.
Run out of...
There's nothing to live and nothing to die for. There is no future, no past to cry for. I'm just dust floating away on the wind.
Getting used to that now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? So
It's great. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
I wrote Comfortably Numb on that, on that
right.
guitar with that
This
tune.
guitar?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's an honour.
Do you think that your solo songs draw on a more emotional side of yourself?
It's hard to say. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Somewhere around here.
His emotional centre is musical. It isn't, you know, most of us express our, you know, anger, love, hate, you know, whatever it is, we express it in words. And David really, really doesn't, but he does express it musically. And I don't know whether, you know, what came first. You know, did the language part of his brain not evolve because the musical part of his brain was so busy, or was he just born with a brain that worked in that way? It's really hard to know, but it's certainly true that emotion for him is expressed musically.
Every once in a while, an idea will force its way to the surface of my mind, and that I will try to write a lyric or song about. But I've got no way of predicting where that's going to go in the future. I keep thinking that there is a little door and a little key that I could open, and I will suddenly find a way that would make it slightly simpler for me to move those things forward and to find them. Because there's plenty to write about, but I haven't yet really pinned that down.
You wrote the lyrics for Faces of Stone yourself, didn't you?
Yeah.
What prompted it?
You know, Faces of Stone was prompted by a memory of a day walking in Ladbroke Gardens with my mother when she was suffering from dementia. And she, as we were walking through the trees, under the trees in there, she was saying, oh, wasn't it lovely? And she said, and she could see pictures that weren't there hanging in the trees. That was a moment that sparked it off, and I had a line that went Faces of Stone, that watched from the dark as the wind swirled around and you took my arm in the park. So it's basically about my mother's decline and, you know, the ending of one life and the beginning of another, because Romany was born 9 months before my mother died, so there was a short period where they were both alive together, and she came back to our house and held Romany in her arms as a tiny baby, and I have a picture of that. And so the moment in the park, which is a mental picture, and the picture that I have of her holding Romany in her arms sort of sparked a little thing which became that lyric. So this is some of the what became Faces of Stone. But this has got the original vocal that I did on my iPhone late one night. which is where the lyric spark came from.
Faces of stone, bleach wet by the sun. As the wind swirled around, you took my own park. Your Hollywood smile shone a light on the past, but it was the future that you held so tight to your heart.
I suppose when you write a song about something specific that has got some emotional content, I mean that one, Faces of Stone, that is related to my mother and her declining years. Yeah, there's an emotional thing in there. I mean, our relationship was very difficult and tricky, and it's good at the moment, right now, to be putting that back into a slightly different perspective and trying to find the affection that was there. You know, I must have loved her, but a lot of the time it didn't feel like I did.
Do you miss her?
Do I miss my mother? No. No, I don't miss her, I don't think, no. It wasn't a closely knit, emotional type family. And when my mother wanted to be closer when she was getting old, I found it difficult to deal with. I just wanted her to get off, leave me alone. Now is not the time to be trying to do this. The time to be doing that stuff was when I was 5.
It's just days away from his first live show, and David and the band are catching up, rehearsing new songs and old.
And tell me about playing live, because you haven't played live for a while. Do you enjoy the experience of playing?
Yes, it's terrific. It's almost like a completely different thing, though, to recording in the studio, where you slave away hermit-like for years and years, perfecting little things. This, you have to do the work in this rehearsal room, getting it as good as you can get it, but then you bash it out, and mistakes don't matter. You know, as long as you get the right overall feel and excitement and emotional depth to what you're doing, the performance is a great part of it.
There's a lot that he has to do to be the front man on the show. It's a big job, being David Gilmour.
And here we are in Croatia.
Never played in Croatia before, never been here, but the Romans got everywhere. Beautiful, isn't it? It is.
How did you find this place?
Well, I set my team off onto finding beautiful places, you know. I just think it's fantastic for people's memories of an event to be something special, not be just another sports arena or stadium, you know. They're going to go away again afterwards, assuming I do a reasonably good show. They're going to go away and they're going to remember it, partly because of the place and the setting they were in.
And then from here you go
Here we're off to Italy, then off to France, and then off to Germany. And then we'll be back to London, where we'll do some more dates at the Albert Hall. And then we'll have a little break. And after this school term is over, we'll head to South America.
The school term sort of comes in the middle of it, because you've got to be in London for the school term.
I want to be around and not be too absent. You know, I've had my moment, you know, of doing all those things and letting my career come first, but I'm established, I think, aren't I?
Yeah. There are some performers for whom the crowd is incredibly important, but I sense that it's not just about the excitement of the crowd, it's more about the moment and the music. Is that true?
It is. Well, we try very hard to get the music really heartfelt when we do it, but you can never get above sort of 70% or something without an audience. Whatever you do in rehearsal, there's a whole massive lift of gear when there's an audience, and for everyone, for me definitely. It's likely to be slightly less perfect, but more fun. Guard the meat. Don't eat the meat.
No, I'll guard it in my stomach very well.
There's potato salad over here. I'm a control freak. I confess I can't do anything about it. I try to stop, but I just am that person who does want to man the barbecue and does want to light the fire and do all those things.
Do you have any regrets?
Can you get through life without regrets? I don't think you can. I've got tons of regrets. Tons of regrets. I mean, all that silly song, I've got a few, but then again, too few to mention. I've got many regrets, but you get on, don't you? There are things I could have done better, things I should have done better.
What is your favourite musical memory?
Oh, God. There are just far, far too many. I mean, I did play at a Les Paul tribute once in New York in the 80s, I think it was. And I was playing a blues number, and B.B. King sort of wandered into the room and stood on the side. And at the end of the song, he came up to me and said, "Hey boy, you sure you wasn't born in Mississippi?"
Don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Remember to let her into your heart. Then you can start to make things better. And you feel the pain. Don't carry the world upon your shoulders. La 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 la, that's too high.
Oh, she knows how to seize her moment, that girl.